Welcome back and welcome to another Dude Tour. Today we find ourselves at the Essex County Airport near Fairfield, New Jersey. We are here today to discuss and find the locations associated with an event that occurred on July 16, 1999. That event is the aircraft crash that took the lives of 3 people, including John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, and her sister Lauren Bessette. If this is your first time here, what we do is we find interesting and historical locations here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. We are not recreating the events, just finding the locations and discussing what happened. Essex County Airport, also known as Caldwell Airport, is located in Fairfield Township, New Jersey, approximately 20 miles west of New York City. CDW is a public-use airport, primarily serving general aviation. The airport has 2 asphalt runways, runway 422, which is 4,553 feet long, and runway 1028, which is 3,719 feet long. Today we are flying the Piper PA-28 Arrow 3 in the simulator. The aircraft that JFK Jr. was flying that day in 1999 was actually a Piper PA-32 Saratoga 2 with the registration number N9253N. Let's get the aircraft started and ready to depart. Once we're airborne, we will take a look at the flight path that JFK Jr. took and what we'll be flying today. John F. Kennedy Jr., the son of President John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, was one of the most iconic figures of the late 20th century. JFK Jr. lived a life under the public eye from the moment of his birth. Often referred to as John, he was a symbol of the Kennedy family's enduring legacy, marked by a blend of charm, charisma, and the relentless scrutiny from the public and the media. His untimely death on July 16, 1999 in a tragic plane crash off the coast of Martha's Vineyard sent shockwaves across the nation and the world. This tour delves into the details of John F. Kennedy Jr.'s life and the circumstances of that plane crash. The aircraft that John F. Kennedy Jr. was flying that day was the Piper PA-32R-301, also known as the Piper Saratoga SP. It's a single-engine, low-wing aircraft designed for general aviation. It's part of Piper's PA-32 series and is known for its retractable landing gear and a reliable 300-horsepower Lycoming engine. The aircraft features a cabin accommodating up to 6 passengers. It has a cruising speed of around 170 knots and a range of approximately 850 nautical miles. We are ready for departure. We will be departing to the south on runway 22 as JFK Jr. did. He was cleared for takeoff at 8:38 p.m.
The desperate hunt for John F. Kennedy Jr. and his passengers swept across the North Atlantic waters, beginning early this morning. The FAA reported the last contact with the plane was made at 9:39 last night during its final approach to the airport on Martha's Vineyard. Kennedy bought the single-engine 6-seater they were traveling in last year, shortly after earning his pilot's license.
Now centering our search about 17 miles west of Martha's Vineyard, the approach to Martha's Vineyard Airport.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. was born on November 25, 1960, just 16 days after his father was elected as the 35th President of the United States. His early life was spent in and around the White House, where he became a beloved figure in American consciousness. His image was famously captured saluting his father's casket during the funeral procession. We are airborne. We will be traveling southwest here at the airport and then turning north on a heading of 55 degrees, which will take us northwest of Teterboro, New Jersey, and then north over the Hudson River. Technically 55-degree bearing, which is the angle between the 2 points we're traveling to, but here in the simulator we will assume that there won't be any circumstances that cause our heading of the actual aircraft to be any different than the bearing, so we'll use the term heading. Radar had picked up JFK Jr.'s plane at 8:40 at about 1,300 feet southwest of the airport. John Jr. grew up under the protective care of his mother, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and later his stepfather, Aristotle Onassis. He attended prestigious schools including Phillips Academy and Brown University before pursuing a career in law and journalism. Despite the pressures of his family's political legacy, John Kennedy Jr. was determined to carve out his own path, eventually founding the political magazine George in 1995. The magazine aimed to blend politics with pop culture, presenting serious political content in a more accessible, celebrity-driven format. George was notable for its innovative approach, using glossy spreads and high-profile interviews to engage readers who might not typically follow traditional political journalism. It had initial success under Kennedy's vision to create a magazine that reflected his own blend of political heritage and modern media savvy. It was at the offices of George magazine where JFK spent the day prior to his departure on the flight that day in 1999. On July 16th, JFK Jr., his wife Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, and her sister Lauren Bessette were preparing for a flight from Essex County Airport, where we just departed from, with the airport code CDW, near Fairfield, New Jersey, to Martha's Vineyard Airport, which has the airport code MVY in Massachusetts, with a planned continuation to Barnstable Municipal Airport, airport code HYA, which is in Hyannis, Massachusetts, where the Kennedys were going to attend a wedding for his cousin Rory Kennedy. The group departed from Essex County Airport at approximately 8:38 p.m. in JFK Jr.'s Piper Saratoga II, a single-engine aircraft that he had recently purchased. JFK Jr. began his flight instructions on October 4th, 1982, and over the next 6 years flew with 6 different certified flight instructors, CFIs, logging 47 hours of flight time, 46 of which were dual instruction hours, and only 1 hour of solo. From September 1988 to December 1997, he had made no entries in his logbook. In December 1997, he enrolled in a private pilot training program at Flight Safety International, FSI, in Vero Beach, Florida. Between December 1997 and April 1998, he accumulated approximately 53 flight hours, 43 with a CFI on board. The CFI who prepared him for his private pilot check ride commented that the pilot had very good flying skills for his experience level. We are now northwest of Teterboro Airport. JFK Jr. had told flight control that he was planning to be northwest of Teterboro on his flight plan, which again is 55 degrees heading towards the Hudson River. On April 22, 1998, JFK Jr. passed his private pilot flight test successfully, which included performing unusual altitude recoveries under instrument conditions. After obtaining his private pilot certificate, he flew solo and continued receiving instructions, accumulating 179 hours in 1998 and including 65 solo hours. In March of 1999, he passed the FAA's written instrument examination with a score of 78%. We are now on a 55-degree heading, which will take us towards the Hudson River, where we will then be turning east to head towards Martha's Vineyard. JFK Jr. returned to FSI in April of 1999 to begin an instrument rating course, which he had completed 12 out of those 25 lessons. His primary instructor noted that JFK had proficiency in basic instrument flying, but mentioned that he had difficulties managing multiple tasks, which was typical for his experience level. JFK Jr. left FSI on April 24, 1999, after logging 13.3 flight hours and 16.9 simulator hours. He then continued instructions in New Jersey in his newly purchased Piper Saratoga, flying with multiple other instructors. The weather conditions the night they flew were less than ideal, with haze and poor visibility reported along the route. Despite these weather conditions, JFK Jr. chose to proceed with the flight, planning to drop off Lauren Bessette at Martha's Vineyard before continuing on to the Kennedy family compound in Hyannis Port. According to the Weather Service International, WSI, a search of their logs indicated that JFK Jr., or someone using his username, made 2 weather requests from the WSI's Pilot Brief website on July 16, 1999. The first request, made at 18:32, was for a radar image. The second request, made at 18:34, was for a route briefing. The report observations included the following. Airport ACK in Nantucket at 17:53 was clear skies, visibility 5 miles in mist, with winds 240 degrees at 16 knots. CDW, which is Essex Airport, at 1753. Clear skies, visibility 4 miles with haze, winds 230 degrees at 7 knots. The airport in Hyannis, HYA, at 1756. Few clouds at 7,000 feet, visibility 6 miles in haze, winds 230 degrees at 13 knots. The Martha's Vineyard Airport, code MVY, 1753, would be clear skies, visibility 6 miles in haze, winds 210 degrees at 11 knots. We are approaching the Hudson River. Once we cross over the river, we'll be heading east. We'll be about 8 miles northwest of the Westchester Airport. Radar had picked up JFK Jr.'s plane about 8 miles from Westchester. A couple of factors that may have affected the flight that night were: 1, JFK was departing later than he had planned to. They had been delayed waiting for his sister-in-law Lauren Bessette to arrive from Manhattan, which took longer than expected. Also, JFK Jr. had injured his ankle weeks earlier in a paragliding accident, which left him wearing a cast. And despite being in a cast, he was determined to pilot the plane himself. The cast made operating the plane more challenging and added stress to the flight, which was happening in poor weather. On the night of the accident, several witnesses at the airport recalled seeing a pilot and a woman near the airplane involved. They also noted that the pilot was using crutches and was busy loading luggage into the aircraft. One witness even mentioned watching the pilot perform an engine run-up before taking off around 8:40 p.m. According to this witness, the takeoff and the initial departure seemed perfectly normal. From the air traffic control ATC transcripts at CDW's tower, it was reported that at about 8:34 p.m., the pilot of N9253N contacted the ground controller saying, "Saratoga 9253 November, ready to taxi with Mike. Right turnout northeast bound." The ground controller then instructed the pilot to taxi to runway 22, which the pilot confirmed. At 8:38 and 32 seconds, the pilot communicated with the tower controller, indicating he was ready for takeoff. The tower cleared him for takeoff at 8:38 and 39 seconds, and the pilot acknowledged the clearance a few seconds later. The tower controller then asked the pilot if he was heading towards Teterboro, New Jersey. The pilot clarified, "No, sir, I'm actually heading a little north of it, eastbound." The tower controller then instructed him to make a right downwind departure, which the pilot confirmed. After that, no further communication between the pilot and ATC was ever recorded. Traveling on that 100-degree heading, we are now almost to the coastline. We'll be passing just north of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and then we'll cross the shoreline between Bridgeport, Connecticut, and New Haven, Connecticut. Radar data showed that at 8:40 and 59 seconds, a radar target with a VFR code appeared about a mile southwest of CDW, which is Essex Airport, at about 1,300 feet altitude. This target moved northeast on a course of about 55 degrees, staying below 2,000 feet. When it reached the Hudson River, it was at 1,400 feet. The aircraft then turned north over the river, climbed, and eventually reached 5,500 feet, where the aircraft then took a heading of about 100 degrees and was about 6 miles north of Westchester County Airport, HPN, in White Plains, New York. If you plotted that course on a VFR map, you'd see that from there it would extend out across Martha's Vineyard, which is probably the right course for him heading to that airport. The aircraft continued eastward at 5,500 feet, passing just north of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and crossed the shoreline between Bridgeport and New Haven, Connecticut. The aircraft then remained on that 100-degree path, parallel to the Connecticut and Rhode Island coastlines. As we leave the shoreline, we will be flying over the water. We'll be adjusting the weather and time settings so that we can get a feel for what it was like for JFK Jr. to be flying at night over the water. After passing Point Judith, Rhode Island, the aircraft continued over the Rhode Island Sound. A study of the radar data revealed that the aircraft started descending from 5,500 feet when it was about 34 miles west of Martha's Vineyard. The airport code there again is MVY. The descent speed was around 160 knots, with a descent rate varying between 400 and 800 feet per minute. Around 9:38 p.m., the aircraft began a right turn towards the south, and about 30 seconds later stopped descending at 2,200 feet and began climbing for another 30 seconds. During that time, the aircraft stopped turning and the airspeed decreased to about 153 knots. By 9:39 p.m., the aircraft had leveled off at 2,500 feet and was heading southeast. About 50 seconds later, the aircraft entered a left turn and climbed to 2,600 feet. As the aircraft continued in that left turn, it began descending again. this time at about 900 feet per minute. When the aircraft reached an easterly direction, it stopped turning, but the descent rate stayed about 900 feet per minute. At 9:40 and 15 seconds, while still descending, the aircraft entered a right turn. As the turn rate increased, the descent rate and airspeed also increased, with the descent rate eventually exceeding 4,700 feet per minute. The last radar position of the aircraft was recorded at 9:40 and 34 seconds at an altitude of 1,100 feet. When the Kennedy's plane failed to arrive at Martha's Vineyard as expected, family members and friends quickly grew concerned. The official search and rescue operation began in the early hours of July 17, 1999, coordinated by the United States Coast Guard, Navy, and Air Force, along with local authorities. Search teams faced significant challenges due to the poor visibility and the rough sea conditions, covering miles of ocean where the plane was believed to have gone down. Despite these obstacles, search teams were able to locate debris from the aircraft, including luggage and pieces of the plane, floating on the water's surface by the afternoon of July 17th. We are now approaching the area where the wreckage was recovered. It was about 120 feet below the surface, and the debris field was about 120 feet long. The main cabin was found in the middle of the debris field. On July 19th, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration vessel Rude finally located fragments of Kennedy's plane using sonar. They captured high-resolution images, which were used to create a three-dimensional map of the ocean floor. At 11:30 p.m. on July 20th, the United States Navy rescue and salvage ship Grasp identified the plane's fuselage. Navy divers found parts of the plane strewn over a broad area of seabed about 120 feet or 37 meters below the surface, approximately 7.5 miles or 12.1 kilometers west of Martha's Vineyard. On the afternoon of July 21st, divers reportedly found the bodies. Coast Guard Admiral Richard M. Larrabee said that all three bodies were near or under the fuselage, still strapped in. The three bodies were then taken to the county medical examiner's office. Autopsies that were performed by the county medical examiner found that all three had died upon impact. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, launched a comprehensive investigation into the crash to determine the causes and contributing factors. The investigation involved analyzing the wreckage, reviewing radar data, pilot training records, weather conditions, and conducting interviews with those familiar with JFK Jr.'s flight experience. We will now head to the airport at Martha's Vineyard, which was their destination. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn were then going to fly to Cape Cod Gateway Airport, which has the airport code HYA. The NTSB's final report was released in August of 2000, and it concluded that the probable cause of the accident was the pilot's failure to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night, which was a result of spatial disorientation. The report noted that JFK Jr. was not qualified to fly an instrument, meteorological conditions IMC, and that his decision to proceed with the flight, despite worsening weather, was a critical error. The NTSB also highlighted several contributing factors, including JFK's relative inexperience as a pilot, the lack of an instructor or a co-pilot on board, and the challenging conditions of night flying over water without visible landmarks. The investigation also pointed out that it was possible that JFK Jr. was under pressure to reach the destination in time for a family event, which may have influenced his decision-making about making the flight. The news of JFK Jr.'s death obviously shocked the world, as the Kennedy family had long been considered American royalty. The media coverage was extensive, with 24-hour news channels providing minute-by-minute updates on the search and the recovery efforts. The public's fascination with the Kennedy family, combined with the tragic circumstances of this crash, led to a media frenzy. In the days following the crash, numerous tributes were made in honor of JFK Jr., his wife Carolyn and Lauren Bessette. Memorial services were held, including a private ceremony at the Kennedy family compound in Hyannis Port and a public memorial service at St. Thomas More Church in New York City. The loss of John F. Kennedy Jr. was felt deeply across the entire United States and around the world. Many viewed him as the symbol of hope and potential, someone who might have continued his family legacy of public service. His death, therefore, was not only a personal tragedy, but also a moment of national mourning. JFK Jr.'s death also added to the tragic narrative often associated with the Kennedy family, marked by untimely deaths in public service. The Kennedy curse was a term frequently mentioned in the media, referring to the string of tragic events that had befallen the family over the decades. This narrative, while compelling to the public, was also a source of discomfort for the Kennedy family, who sought to honor their loved ones' memories without being defined by tragedy. Despite the sadness surrounding his death, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s life and legacy continued to be celebrated. He was remembered not only for his famous lineage, but also for his own achievements and his efforts to create a unique identity apart from the family's political dynasty, especially his work with George Magazine. Following his death, George Magazine struggled with declining circulation and advertising revenue, leading to its closure in 2001, 2 years after his death. Of course, being a Kennedy caused most of the media coverage to center on JFK Jr., and sometimes lost in the media coverage was who Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy and Lauren Bessette were. When the airplane went missing, the headlines often failed to even mention Caroline's older sister, Lauren. And it was the discovery of Lauren's business card during the search that was actually the first indication that the plane had gone down in the Atlantic. Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy was an American publicist known for her work in the fashion industry. She was born in White Plains, New York. Carolyn attended Boston University, where she studied elementary education. After college, she worked for Calvin Klein, quickly rising through the ranks to become the company's public relations director. Lauren Bessette was an accomplished investment banker and the older sister of Carolyn Bessette-Kennedy, also born in White Plains, New York. Lauren excelled academically, earning degrees from Hobart and William Smith colleges and an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. She built a successful career in finance, working for Morgan Stanley in various roles, including as an executive in the firm's Hong Kong office. She has a twin sister, Lisa. Carolyn first met JFK Jr. in 1992 while he was dating actress Daryl Hannah. Carolyn and JFK Jr. began dating in 1994, and she moved into his Tribeca loft in the summer of 1995. The couple became engaged later that year. She quit her job at Calvin Klein in the spring of 1996, and she also became a popular paparazzi target. Gossip columns detailed where they ate and shopped and even covered their public disagreements. Paparazzi often waited outside the couple's Tribeca apartment to snap photos. JFK Jr. was planning to attend the wedding of Rory Kennedy. She had planned to hold it at the family compound in Hyannis Port. The date was set for July 17, 1999. 275 guests were invited. The wedding party numbered 30. The plans, 9 months in the making, were kept quiet and private. But all that changed on the night of the crash. The Kennedy compound in Hyannis Port, Massachusetts, is one of the most iconic properties situated on Cape Cod. This collection of homes has long been associated with the Kennedy family, often referred to as America's royal family. Hyannis Port, a small seaside village on Cape Cod, is located in the town of Barnstable, Massachusetts. The Kennedy compound itself is located on a 6-acre property that has privacy and seclusion while still providing views of the Atlantic Ocean. The Kennedy compound originally consisted of 3 houses, all of which played significant roles in the lives of the Kennedy family. The first house was purchased by Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., the patriarch of the Kennedy family, in 1928. This large white clapboard house became the main residence in the heart of the compound. As the Kennedy children grew older and started families of their own, the compound expanded. John F. Kennedy purchased a neighboring home in 1956, and his brother Robert acquired another adjacent property in 1959. These 3 homes became the epicenter of the Kennedy family life. Possibly on another tour, we will find the Kennedy compound. We are on the ground. Welcome to Martha's Vineyard Airport, airport code MVY, located here on the island of Martha's Vineyard. It's approximately 3 miles south of Vineyard Haven in Dukes County, Massachusetts. It's a public airport, serves both commercial and general aviation. Has 2 asphalt runways, runway 624, which is 5,504 feet long, and runway 1533, which is 3,297 feet long. The U.S. president at the time of the incident was Bill Clinton. After the plane went missing, the president spoke with Kennedy's older sister Caroline and Uncle Ted. President Clinton also spoke to Andrew Cuomo, who was married to Kennedy's cousin Kerry. The president's spokesman said he wanted to let them know he was thinking about them and that we'll do everything we can and that our prayers are with them. President Clinton responded by ordering U.S. Navy warships to assist in the search for Kennedy's plane. Critics argued that the search was an abuse of taxpayer dollars, as no ordinary citizen would receive similar treatment. Clinton justified it by saying that the Kennedys had suffered much and given more.